reason I do it is to help my team get better, to help my players get better. I'm not mentoring a kid or having individual relationships, for my own needs. I think one of the most difficult challenges of coaching is, how do I actually help my team and I and my staff get aligned on the things that we believe in? And depending on how long I'm at a club, right? Ideally, we're talking about long-term player development. So when coaches are here for a year, there for a year, over there for 2 years, someplace else for a couple of years, there's no way that I can have sort of this continuity of development. So if you start with these kids and they have a certain way of playing, and culturally, I remember my first time coaching here in Germany, sort of early 2000s, and I came on the field and I had a very sort of holistic and game-centric idea around soccer, and I put this in a team of U18 kids where they were used to, this is how you train. You do X, Y, Z, and then you play at the end. The next day you do X, Y, Z with some variation, then you play at the end. And I came in and said, well, let's just play. Let's start with some sort of 4v4 or 3v3 environments. And it was too chaotic. It was too abstract. That there was this whole disruption in this is how we do things here, and you're coming in and saying we need to do things differently.
Right.
So where's the compromise? Do I just say absolutely we have to do this, or do I say actually I'm just going to do whatever you want to do? And at the end, what are we trying to see? Well, we're trying to see how we're improving. At that level, we're trying to look at results. Are we able to successfully compete? And I can say, this is what I believe, this is the system, this is the approach, this is the philosophy. So everybody get on board or leave. Some people do that, and maybe it's successful. Or I can say, where am I? What is the environment I'm in? What is the culture that I'm in? The culture of, in this case, maybe the state or the community or the country. And what is the club's culture? What is the club's belief? Why do they exist? What is the mission of this club? And are they a professional club? Are they a grassroots club? Are they a recreational club that has multiple sports? Is soccer the only thing? How do I actually understand that club, that culture, and those people? And that doesn't come by showing up with my list of demands, right? That comes, in my opinion, by showing up and spending time getting the feel for that. And by the way, the level is always a little bit higher than where the player is, right? Nobody ever gets there. Potential is never actually reached. There's always something you're going after. But I have to be able then to create the conditions so that that moment where success and failure are balanced. There's successful attempts and there are unsuccessful attempts, right? If it's always successful, it's too easy, I'll get bored. If it's always too difficult and unsuccessful, I'll get frustrated. So whatever that thing is that I'm trying to help the player develop in, to create the conditions where there's a balance of successful and unsuccessful attempts. And there is where I can observe. And there's where I can see what's the gap. And that's teaching. So when Bayern Munich hired Pep years ago, they knew exactly what was going to happen. And Pep knew exactly what was going to happen. He was going to come in and he was going to impose a different style of play at Bayern Munich than they were accustomed to.
Right.
That was already obviously understood, and it was assessed, it was analyzed. All the people in the conversations prior to that were able to recognize that this is a change that the club wanted. They knew it was a change, and he wasn't going to come in and coach the way that previous coaches had coached. So those were all very deliberate things, and there's a system, there's a program, and it comes in. And it does get more imparted because those coaches can select their players. They go and buy players. My youth coach, a guy by the name of Tony Martelli, he introduced us to this passion, this absolute passion for the game. Was a fantastic coach, was great with all of us as kids, but really, if anything, we just learned that soccer was such an important part of life and society because he brought that real Italian passion with him. So I learned to love the game through him, just absolutely loved the game. My college coach, Dr. Fred Tauby, he really taught us, again, continuing to love the game. At that point, we were young men. And in that space, again, it was really about teaching. And how do you learn to play? And how do you actually understand the way the game works? on the field, and the way your teammates and you interact, and the way the coaches and the team interacts, and how the opponent plays a key role in how we go about trying to achieve the object of the game, which is to move the ball forward and create chances and score goals. So there was a lot of that. This was a Division III program. So this idea of the student athlete was really important. We weren't on scholarship. We were a bunch of men having a great time, learning to be teachers, like I said, and really just having an opportunity to reach our potential. And they created the conditions for us to reach our potential. And one of the conditions, probably the most important condition, was it had to be fun. It had to be enjoyable. And we laughed and we had such a great time. And we worked really, really hard to that. But teaching, mentoring, managing, and leading. And a coach has responsibilities, I believe, in all four of those. Teaching is creating the conditions for learning, for players to develop, for improvement towards someone's potential. So the coach has to be able to create conditions for learning to occur. The leading aspect is about where are we headed? What do we believe? How do we want to play? What types of players do we want in our team in order to be able to play the way we want to play? How is that aligned with our club? And where does the journey lead us over the next however many years? So the whole player development pathway and thinking about being visionary across there, that's the leading aspect. How do I actually lead people toward something that they actually see themselves in? So co-created visions are a belief of mine. I know some people ask, what's your vision? And I will often say, well, let's get together. And if we're going to work together, let's co-create a vision. Because if I just give you my vision, who's to say that it's yours? So how do you take ownership over something and see yourself in that vision? Managing, obviously, all the day-to-day parts. There's a whole player development environment that has to be managed. That includes everything from parents to your staff, to your facilities, to your club leaders, to your community. A lot of work to be done in there as well. And then the mentoring aspect is really that individualized, unconditional attention to help each player achieve his or her potential. So that mentoring piece is, how do I actually help you achieve your goals? How do I help you reflect on experiences, in this case on the field, and look at those according to the goals that you or we have set, and identify where you are now, where you're trying to go, what's the gap, and how do we actually take next steps in learning to close that gap? And you have to drive that as the player. You drive your own development as the player, and I create, hopefully, the conditions and give you opportunities to reflect and identify what those steps are. That's this mentoring piece. So those are the four roles. We had these conversations in the previous years around players taking responsibility for their own development. And people would say, Frank, come on, you know, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, how are they going to take responsibility for their own development? Well, they remembered to bring their shin guards. Ah, okay. They remembered to ask mom or dad to make sure the water bottle was full. They remember when they got to the field to help the coach. So at every level, there can be all of these different aspects. So the idea of mentoring a 6 or 7-year-old, you know, mentoring may be a bit too formal, but it's about building a relationship. It's about having rapport and giving every kid unconditional attention. I think any team should have 22, 24, 25 players. You know, it's over here you've got 15, 16, 17 kids on a team. Why would I take you on my team if you're not going to be able to play regularly? Then I need a second team or a third team, or I need to have enough clubs in the area that these kids have chances to play. But when I've got 22 to 25 kids on a team and half of them are sitting on the bench for the whole game, that's not why I came. I came to play soccer. I came to participate. So first, you're looking at some of the managerial aspects. When we can lower those roster sizes and give kids more opportunities to play, then we'll have more opportunities for them to develop. Sure. I think a company like Coach Better, there's technology that's there to help these individual relationships take place in the digital world. Again, developmentally appropriate, because for 6, 7, 8-year-olds, it's certainly different. In that case, it could just be, let's go on the field and let's, at the end of my training session, have me reflect as the coach. Let's say I'm coaching the younger kids. Well, I can ask myself questions. You could videotape me. How many individual interactions did I have with each player? Was there a player today who got no attention from me? Was never asked a question, was never given praise, was never even interacted with? Were there questions asked, period? How many questions did I ask? Because by asking a question, I'm getting the player to reflect and think about their solutions. And you can do that with the youngest kids as well.
Mm.
And my individual sort of mentorship piece takes place on the field, can take place before and after practice. And just there, I have at least some time that I can manage a little bit of this. And then there's some of the digital aspects. Through how do we actually track coaches? Right now with players, we have our heart rate monitors, our GPS systems, we have observational tools, we have all these different ways to track players. But who's tracking the coach? Yeah, who's going to look at the coach and say where the coach stood throughout a training session? How much were they able to interact with players based on simply where they stood? What were the words they used? What was the timing of the words they used? How many questions did they ask? How many follow-up questions did they ask? Where did they just give an answer? Where did they allow silence to take place so the team could play and think on their own? You can track coaches. And I don't know that we've got any real good tools out there at the moment to track coaches. But when I can track myself, then I can look back and I can answer some of the questions you asked. Well, how do I know how much I interacted, how much individual attention I gave? I know with US soccer right now and a lot of the federations, everything you do is videotaped. So you can absolutely observe your behavior and assess yourself, or your instructors or your peers can assess what you've done on the field. But I'd like to see that even get into more detail on how we track coaches. Well done. Take care. Same to you.